Hello, and how are you? Welcome to this third lecture that we are going to have. And basically in this third lecture we are going to deal with the stuff as I had announced earlier in the previous tutorial. So by the end of this tutorial, there are some things that we call specific objectives that we ought to be able to achieve. But before that, we'll have a quick word of prayer. Father, Lord in heaven, we invite you into this session. You being the greatest musician you have known, we ask that you be able to take us through. Just let me pray. Amen. Now, the specific objectives very quickly. By the end of this lecture, you should be able to, 1, define the staff. Number 2, you should also be able to draw that particular staff, what will define as the staff. So these are very short lectures, so we are going to try to expound much more things here, but just in brief terms. It's a very short one, so stay tuned. But before that, in the previous lecture, there's something I touched about, the keyboard. Now, I would like to give you a diagrammatical representation of a keyboard and the staff. Though we are going to learn about the staff, I just want you to have that diagram in mind, sketch it somewhere, so that as we progress, you may keep on remembering that the staff is also related to the keyboard. Though we are going to try to expound much more and be able to explain what it is, but this is just a brief connection between the two, the keyboard and the staff. So this is what we are able to see. I explained that while I was playing on the keyboard, various notes and how they are. Though here the black keys are not represented because it's mainly on a key called C major scale. This is what we call C major scale. Don't worry, in some tutorials to come we shall be able to look at what C major scale is, though I gave a very good introduction, I suppose, in the previous tutorial while we were looking at the elements of music. Here notice the last point below that diagrammatical representation, there's something said ledger lines on treble and bass clef, and piano keys, they correspond to that. So it's basically a very good way of summarizing the relationship between the two. Though there's something called ledger lines, we are going to explain that in this lecture. On treble, what is treble and bass clef? We're explaining that in the next lecture, when we shall be looking at clef and various types of clefs. So with that, at least you have an idea about the correspondence of the two. Sorry for that. So let me explain much more with the next diagram. It gives a very good explanation. You can have now an almost clear keyboard or a piano that can now explain to you that. Now the keyboard is labeled, but the staff is not labeled. Now try drawing what is here and draw the corresponding notes between them. Don't worry, there's something called here middle C. We shall explain that also in some lectures to come. There's also some, we have also looked at what's called an octave in the introduction. An octave was basically an interval of 6.5 tones. But with the lecture where we shall be looking at intervals, we shall explain that much more in detail. So that is mainly what we are going to look upon this particular lecture. Let me explain with a third point. This one can now give you an answer to what you have already written, whereby both the staff and the keyboard have been labeled. There's this thing middle C. Not all these things that are quite new, so that when it reaches the time whereby probably you have found out that I didn't mention something, you can still remind me so that I be able to define it with time. So let's quickly dive into our lecture about the staff. So what is a staff? Just a question. What's the definition of a staff? Can it be one of the famous stories of Moses, when you heard about shepherds in the olden days? They used to walk with what? A staff. That is true. But is that musical? If you hit the staff, or what? Is it somewhere musical? Or are we speaking about a group of members that are of a particular organization? All of that is a staff, but not musical. In music terms, we have a clear definition of what a staff is. A staff is basically a group of 5 lines and 4 spaces where music notes are written. Simple, like that. a group of 5 lines and 4 spaces where music notes are written. It's basically 5 lines and 4 spaces, you can see from that diagram. Now, these 5 lines are labeled. We label them with particular numbers as a beginner, though when you become a musician, you'll know that those numbers exist, but you shall not be using them as often as when you'll be working out with more complex ideas. So this is just for a foundation, so that you may be able to build upon that foundation as we increase the height of the music tower in this particular course. So basically, they are labeled from the least lowest line to the highest line in this manner. So you can see the lines are labeled 1 through 5, and then spaces are labeled also from below to top 1 through 4. But we have said that it's where music notes are written. Now, an example of music notes is what we call a semi-brief. Now, don't be worried of what a semi-brief is. You shall see the diagram of what a semi-brief is, but shall be well explained also with the time. I believe 2 sessions from now. So, the staff is where music notes are written, and music notes are written that then. So you can see the line representation, whereby they are all labeled 1 through 5 here, and you have the spaces. Now, a semi-brief is what you can see. These are semi-briefs. Though they are not written in this manner, this is just a way of helping you out to be able to understand how music notes are written here. So on the line, this is how the notes will be. It cuts across that head of the note. And if it's in the space, it will just be between those 2 lines. It will not go above or below. It's at that specific location. So that's something you need to note. This is an art. If you mismatch the position of the note, you shall miss out the music that you are yet to get. I believe you can speed back to the previous tutorial about elements of music, whereby we were looking at some particular music pieces, and you can be able to see how the music notes are on that particular staff. You'll figure out that they are at a specific position, such that you cannot miss it out to be able to define what that note is. So ensure that you practice how to label them as soon as we learn how to be able to write music notes there. So that's what we know up to this particular case. That's the stuff. 5 lines and 4 spaces where music notes are written, not any kind of line. Next, let us build upon here. Find that in this music stuff, you will have notes, but these notes may overlap. I believe from the previous music examples in the elements of music, please refer there. You shall find that there are some notes that are hanging. They go above the staff and below the staff. What happens? It shall be well understood. We shall be looking at now the scale with respect to the music. Now, even in this particular tutorial, you have noticed that in the first case, when I was giving you a briefing of, or reminding you of what we covered before, there are notes that were hanging above the staff and below the staff, but the staff, we said it's a group of 5 lines and 4 spaces. So we have things called ledger lines. These are basically short broken lines that extend the staff upwards and below. For example, in this manner, here we have notes. These notes are what we call crotchets. It's good that you note their names early, but you get the difference. There's a crochet and a crochet. Crochet is what you use to sew things, but these are crochet. The spelling is crot, C-R-O-T-C-H-E-T, crochet. So this is what we call a crochet. Notice it's also at the specific point, but this is the staff. Don't worry about this beginning points and what they are. We shall explain in the next tutorial. But to give you an upper hand, this is what we call the G clef. This is what we call the F clef, or basically we had seen this earlier, treble and bass clef. This is the treble clef. This is the bass clef. So start practicing how to define them with respect to this diagram that you have here. So here we have ledger lines. So let's get the official definition of ledger lines. It's basically, they are short broken lines that extend the staff to pitches that fall below or above it. That's basically what ledger lines are. So here is a good representation of ledger lines. Those are what we term as ledger lines. Those two here. Maybe you can notice what they are. So this one and that are what are ledger lines. They extend the staff upwards or downwards. Now that's where we pause. In summary, This staff is a group of 5 lines and 4 spaces where music notes are written. And ledger lines are short broken lines that extend the staff to pitches that fall below or above it. In the next lecture, we shall look at